Joining me in leading this is Jane Whittington, who is not responsible, but she leads on Christian distinctiveness for the Diocesan Board of Education and has a responsibility, therefore, across the whole of the geographical diocese. We also have Folly Olakosi, who is Vicar of St. Mary Oatlands in that bit of the diocese. And then we have the dynamic duo, Sarah Dunning and Jackie Drake-Smith. Sarah is head teacher of St. Peter's School, Farnham, which is in Wrecklesham. And Jackie, of course, is vicar of the parish in Wrecklesham. And all of these colleagues bring something really helpful, which I hope you'll find as creative as I always have, to the work that we're thinking about today. So if we can turn to growing faith then, thanks Wendy, and just this first introduction slide about what growing faith is, so that we're all basically on the same page. Thanks. And the next one, we're getting there. This is about what our webinar is today, is we want to do something to deepen our own understanding of growing faith for ourselves and to reflect together on the learning during this time of lockdown. We've learned so much, and we've all realized that not seeing each other regularly, those water cooler moments or passing in the street, it's been hard to find time for reflection. So this is a gift we're giving to each other. And then both in the pack that will get sent to all of us who participated today, but then also to be available, will be lots of ideas that we've brought to the table, but we know that you've brought lots of ideas as well. So we're going to capture those later on. So those are our three takeaways if we want to. We want to deepen our own understanding, do some reflection, and get some ideas to take away. Thanks very much, Wendy. Next slide. Growing faith is a national commitment, and it isn't just about schools, and it isn't just about church, and it isn't just about households. But at the heart of it is that the whole church is equipped to think intergenerationally. We need 4 generations working, worshiping, learning together in order for us to be for our community what the church is. And then in particular, because of the importance of those 4 generations and the way they're all held together, that what we do see is a shift, that we remember that the lens of children, young people and households is something through which we look, as well as all the other lenses we have as ministers in our toolbox. And then that together, children and young people and households will grow in discipleship, and therefore we will be able to more effectively serve our community. So on this next slide, you'll see that the principles of growing faith it's difficult to put into pictures, and Jane and I keep using different pictures we like a bit better. But we have the Venn diagram on the left, where we have our schools, we have our churches, and then we have our households. And we've done households, not families, because we know that households often include more than just those who have a blood relation with each other. And so you'll see there's overlaps between all 3 and in 2s, and then right in the center, there's that where all 3 hit, and that's really the bonus. But another way to think about it is not simply schools and churches and households, but then in each of these 3 settings, we are all, of whatever age, we're having spiritual encounters, we're connecting with our community. And one of the things we've particularly seen during lockdown is the imaginative practices that have been going on in schools, in churches, and in households. And what we've heard, and I don't know about everyone else, but what I've heard is parents and grandparents being astonished with themselves and what they've been able to take up in terms of resources or just what they've learned. And as households, they've really all grown together in the areas of faith and discipleship, but in lots of other ways as well. So we want to be able to capture that and to take away what we might be able to do the same, to do differently, to listen for one another. So that's our introduction. That's what we're seeking to do. So we're going to grow and we're going to learn and we're going to reflect. And we're doing that. First, I'm going to call on Folly, and Folly will introduce himself, and he's in one particular context. And as we're listening to colleagues, of course, we're going to listen to our own context. But Folly, off you go, and we're keeping to time so far.
Thank you very much, Diana. as Diana said, I am the vicar at St. Mary's in Oatlands, and before then I can see some faces I know very well. Ellen Bray, it's good to see you. I was with Ellen in Cobham before that. Wendy, can we have the first slide, please? I suppose for us in Oatlands, the first question we wanted to ask ourselves, and which we did ask, is what's it all about? Can you have the next slide? Thanks, Wendy. What's our guiding principle? And we thought all about God. It's a relationship, but it's not an empty shell. It's a relationship which is filled with faith, fun, and fellowship. And these three things are our guiding principles in everything that we do, not only with families, but with churches and with the school as well. Can we go to the next slide? And so it sort of looks like this in our own planning way. So we have a relationship with school, relationship with the children, and a relationship with the parents, with God and the church being at the center of that, and trying to hold this, I call them the tripod, holding them together. And as we know, with a tripod, if one leg is not standing well, everything sort of falls apart. And that's how we try and form our own strategies of working with this school. And I should say the school we work with is a non-Church of England school. So most of your parishes would have a school of such nature. Can we go to the next slide, please, Wendy? So in our relationship with the school, one thing we decided to do deliberately is to invest our time and energy in the staff. So we ensure that we get to know them, we visit them. For example, during this lockdown, we have a system of taking a cup of tea to them every Wednesday morning, and just to say thank you for all you are doing and caring for them, because in doing that, you create a relationship of trust. But also there are our parishioners. When we are licensed into a parish, we are told we are licensed to this parish to care for the souls of everyone, those who live, work, or visit our parish. And even those who are children ministers or youth workers or whatever your role is to the whole parish and not to your church as well. And when we go in, we ask the question, how can we help? Rather than what they can do for us, we are on offer. What can we contribute? We are here for you as your parish church. Can we have the next slide, please, Wendy? With the children, it's so much fun. I love this picture. If you can see that picture, that's my daughter. Obviously, I'm very proud of her. But that notwithstanding, and behind him is a lay minister, and that's the type of church we want, a kind of intergenerational relationship. But then with the school and the children in our community, we want to create genuine presence and pastoral care. So we have a youth group that is not limited to those who come to church, but a community youth group. And we're very friendly with them, because in that, you create that trust and become accessible to them. But we also always say to ourselves, we are neither their teacher nor their parents. Our relationship with them is something else. We are not there to discipline them, to tell them whether they are talking their shit or not. That's not our role. Our role is to show them the love of God. Wendy, please. And with the parents, it's about the same thing that you do for everyone, really. It's about presence and pastoral care. Now, this picture it was a school visiting the church just at Easter. And the lady sitting in beside me there is one of our parents. She wasn't a member at that time. She's now a member of our church. But at that time, she was not a member. And she thought she would never be able to tell the Easter story. But we gave her the permission, and we gave her the tools and the explanation of what the bread and wine really means. And now she is one of our strong members coming to our toddler service. So we need to invite, give permission, and encourage. Next slide, please, Wendy. So what have we learned from our own experience? The first thing we learn is that we are not always right. I was telling my colleagues the story of going to the local school, which is a community school, and thinking that because the school is in my parish, that means they are my school. Of course, the school is ours, but it is not ours at the same time. The school is a community school, but also the head teacher takes responsibility for the school. But then we create a relationship to make everything work. And relationships are very, very important. I cannot but buttress that you have to develop a culture of invitation, but not just inviting them, giving them permission to do and make mistakes, because then it's through mistakes that we all learn. Next slide, please, Wendy. So I would recommend that you use what you've got. Always use what you've got to make what you want to get to. Remember, our founding principle, our guideline is having fun, developing faith, and having fellowship. So we use events in church calendar like the All Saints and All Souls. We invite the children to come for light a candle or a celebration of light. On Remembrance Sunday, we always have a poem competition for the schools, and we are planning to extend it to the uniform organizations. For service of night lessons, you can invite the head teacher or even a member of the school to come and read the lesson. And in that, they are members of your community. Last one, please, Wendy. At Epiphany, we invite for New Year celebration. Pancake Sunday is a very good one. Everybody loves eating a pancake. September, think of Back to School Sunday, Harvest, Food Bank Collection, and everything else. But one of the last things I'll say is the most important thing that we've learned is we need to always pray for our community. We also have to find ways of remaining in contact with them always, and always support them and invite them. And I always like a slogan. So my last one for you is, it's not a marathon, it's a marathon and not a sprint. So it's about relationship, which you need to work on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Folly.
Am I on time?
Perfect. Lots and lots to think about, and I know that it's whizzing around in your heads. Sarah and Jackie, I'll call to you now. Introduce yourselves and your bit of your context, and then share with us what you brought.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Dunning. I'm the head teacher of St Peter's Primary School at Recklesham, and the lovely Reverend Jacqueline is our vicar at St Peter's, just up the road. And we've had a relationship now for about 2 years. I think you've been with us, Jacqueline. You're on mute, Jacqueline, if you want. So just picking up what Foley said, that relationship is just so key. I'm blessed to have a really great friendship with my local vicar, which extends to a coffee and time to pray with each other. And I think that really strengthens our relationship. But I think we were saying one sort of top tip, as you like, getting to know your head teacher. You would know whether that was appropriate to then launch into prayer together, or whether that's something that you would build up over time. But that time together is really important. And I give Reverend Jacqueline full permission to say and behave how she wants to in her assemblies. And I think that's really key, that she can be really authentic, and the children and the staff look to Reverend Jacqueline because she's got the collar and she's got a certain well, obviously a role to play. We kind of want that to come through, and we love it when she does the blessing for us, or she leads us through an agape communion service, etc. So I think that's really important. And then just to pick up on another thing Foley said, was that Reverend Jacqueline always invites the school into her service, whether it's an assembly that the children have already done to the parents, they then go down to the church and do it there. The school choir, the parent choir, as Foley said, having members of the staff team do readings or prayers, etc. And just having that really open relationship, because as soon as you get children in the church, they have to bring their parents because they need to be accompanied, and then you've got yourself an extended family, which is really exciting. And I'll pass over to Jacqueline to talk about the Messy Church and the Alpha online, and how that takes the children into church.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, Messy Church. So we got that. I mean, it happened. Started a couple of years ago, very slowly, talking about themes and appealing to people that didn't come to church. There's 400 children at the school, but there isn't 400 children in the church on a Sunday. So we developed the Sunday afternoon Messy Church, and slowly, I mean, we have a huge number now. But what's happening there is it's a community. So the brand, if you like, for the church is to be the spiritual hub of the community, building a community of communities. So we have St. Peter's Church community, we have St. Peter's School community, and we have Messy Church community, if we're talking about that context. And so what you get this weaving in and out of all the communities, and there's no rubric for when they have to go into either. It's just that you're all bumping into each other metaphorically, and that's how it is. And so all our advertising goes through the school, through the school Facebook page. And I think also I've sort of spent a couple of years really building up, getting to know people in different contexts. We have wreath making, for example, and we have the young mums coming down and they join. And then from the wreath making, then we have the songbirds, as Sarah talked about. There's a mums community choir at the school. We're now going to develop junior songbirds down in the school, in the church, and having workshops, and they're going to gather. So it's about bridging the different communities, so it all actually becomes one, and having one hub where everyone meets. And for me, theologically, it's in the body of Christ. It's in the gospel of hospitality, welcome and love. And that takes shape in depending on what it might mean for your community. But for us, it's like gathering in one place. Like, for example, Remembrance Poppy Day, like Holly was talking about. We all communally made poppies, didn't we, Sarah? So the school made, the children made poppies there, the guides, the uniforms, the church, and Recklesham Village Voice, which is, don't come to church, and they just, you know, at the moment, and we all gathered and made these poppies and made a big spread across the church, and so you're gathering, you're finding a common bond where people can meet. If God's meeting people where they are, so that's been really good. And as I say, the choir, on the back of that choir, the junior choir we're developing, there will come an online, there come a junior alpha. That's the vision, if you like. So it's about it's meeting people where they are and loving people through their interests, and it's an incarnational faith. So that's our strategy, isn't it, Sarah? Really.
I was just one quick thing to add to that, Jacqueline. Absolutely, that we try and join up some themes. So, for example, we're a very global school and an eco-friendly school, and whilst that could have religious themes to it and non-religious, obviously, that's a really nice way to get the conversations into the home, things that are happening at school linked to church, etc., which everyone can get their heads around and start to begin to ask some big questions, which we can then eventually put our faith slant into it. But that's just always a
We've developed Wild in Recklesham group, haven't we? So that's a mixture of church and social and school people that have come together to help where they can wild Recklesham Village, you know, in new ways. So yes, that's a good point, Sarah.
Thank you. There's so much there that we've heard about bridging, about relationships, about that importance of fun and fellowship and so on. And there's enough talking from us. We've had this period of lockdown where we've not been able to necessarily be physically in those places, but still the importance of the bridging relationships. And a bridge always goes both ways. The question we'd like you to discuss, and we've got a slide when you'll put up, is what have you seen, it might be in your own setting or in someone else's, during lockdown that you feel addressed the principles of growing in faith? What have you seen during lockdown to address these principles of those relationships?
We'll move straight into the second one. If you could move in on, please, Wendy. I don't know if any of you have found the Faith at Home materials on the Church of England website. I've linked them onto this slide here, but there are some really useful materials on this page of the Church of England website. Wendy, if we go on to the next slide, this is what you will find on that page. And so you've got material there for schools, for families, and for church leaders. And what I would say is in the schools bit, you've got quite a mix of things that you could use as a youth and children's worker, as well as with actually in a school. So if we go on to the next slide, these are some of the things that have been suggested in the schools area, which I think are really great. I love these Bible chat mats from the Diocese of Bath and Wells. I don't know if anybody's seen them before, but you can download them and talk about the content and the thinking behind it and answer the questions as you go. Lovely to do in families, I think. And the next resource in here, some of you will be familiar with prayer spaces in schools, but they've produced materials to use in the home during lockdown. Very simple things that most families would have around and about, and they're putting at least a couple on every week. Really useful for again, faith in the home. On to the next slide, Wendy. I don't know if any of you use Engage Worship. I'm a huge fan of their material when I'm leading worship for church, but again, they produce these excellent Engage at Home materials, which they produced right through until the end of May, I think it was. Things for families to do together. And moving on, we've been working away at the diocese, and we've produced materials at this point in time, which we've called Rebuilding Community, based around Nehemiah. And these are collective worships that can be used either with the children who are back in school, but there's a parallel version that can be sent home for families to do at home. So those are on the diocese website, and they would work for church schools and for community schools. And then finally, you'll get a little booklet in the materials that are sent to you after this webinar. I've called it Jane's Booklet of Ideas. Whenever we have a session like this, I gather up all the wonderful things that I hear, and I put them into a booklet. And so I've got examples of people using puppets. I've got examples of pop-up coffees outside churches and school gates for parents. And the picture in the middle there is actually where the children in some of our local schools encouraged the adults who visited the cathedral to engage in prayer and worship for Holy Week in 2019. Because part of this thinking about growing faith is actually the children leading our spiritual lives as much as the adults leading the spiritual lives of the children. And that was a wonderful moment, and something we'd like to build on. So these will come to you in a pack after this session, and I've hyperlinked everything on there so you can have a good old rummage around, because there's some really good stuff that's been coming out, particularly for use in homes during this close down.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Jane. And I know we're all dying to know. Come on, Janet, tell us about Cheesy Church.
No, we have two little wooden mice that are normally in church. One is called Cheesy and one is called Pickles. And the children like looking for them. They're supposed to look for them after the service, but of course, you know, sometimes they look for it during the service. But we've left Pickles in church to guard the church and keep it safe. But Cheesy has gone home with Rosie, the vicar, and we've been meeting the last few weeks. I think we've done 3 or 4 now, with something called Cheesy Church, and Cheesy is there at that with a puppet, and it's really trying to teach them a little bit about discipleship, and they all have their magnifying glasses ready to look for the clues in the story of you know, with the theme, and we wear silly hats to be in disguise when we go out and things like that. And this week we were doing about salt, being the salt, and so we had salt to taste and sugar to taste and various things like that. They get sent off to find these things, which the parents are expected to be on hand to help, but they don't have to be in the picture. and the children love it. And so we sometimes use a puppet, and sometimes we, you know, sing some songs, and it just depends. It's a chance for the children really to get together and have their space, and to be able to tell each other what they've been doing, because they don't, you know, they don't get much chance to do that now. After our worship, then they do get a little bit of time, but it's not very long. So it is their space, and so it varies quite a lot. You know, sometimes we get quite a lot of input in there because they're calm and relaxed. They got better as time went on. The first week, none of them were back at school, and it was absolutely manic because they all had so much to tell and everything. But now it's much calmer, and so we're beginning to be able to give a little bit of input. But it's nice for them each to have their space to say what they've been doing and things like that.
Thank you.
It's good.
Thank you. There's been, we can see on the chat too, there's such a lot of that we're holding in common, the way that we've used social media of different ways, Facebook Live and Zoom. And what the, in terms of children, how they get up to being children in school and having a chance to talk together about what they've done in collective worship, what they've done at the weekend, how they feel about things in the news. That's something that our schools do and teachers do, and we can, there's a great resource there for us who are church based in whatever way, to actually, if we don't regularly, to just ask if we can spend some time in school, because it'll be different than when we were in school, regardless of how young we are. It's different yet again. Thank you. There's so much about that too, that we've been recognizing it.
One of the things that's striking me, Diana, is a lot of people are actually doing assemblies for their schools via Zoom or school, or sending assembly materials home. And I think when I started looking at the growing faith agenda and the intersect between school and church and household, it was actually developing faith in the household that was the bit that we were scratching our heads over, if I'm honest, and thinking, how do we do it? And suddenly we've got assemblies being beamed onto people's kitchen tables, as Sarah said last week. We've got churches providing assembly material that's being used in homes. And head teachers are telling me that families are having discussions about prayer and faith with them that they would never have had out of this very strange period of time, which is quite incredible, really. I don't know if it's an experience other people have found, but
well, it seems there's a lot of that too that's gone around with the teachers and what's been on our chat as well. And it resonates for me a bit with what Folly said at the beginning, is that it is about both invitation and permission, whereby it might have been that we would invite parents into school for the assemblies when collective worship was happening, but it would have never occurred to any of us that we would have broadcast collective worship into parents' homes, just like it would never have occurred to us about broadcasting worship. That leads us really helpfully into what we wanted to do in the second bit of breakout groups, which will be shorter. I think we could probably just do 6 minutes of this, Wendy. We've all been doing things differently and some new things, but what's been so valuable, this is a question in the breakout room, what's been so valuable during this period that you'll consider ways of continuing the essence of it? So it might not be exactly the same thing, but it's captured the essence of your principles, and in terms of principles of growing faith, those bridges that are so important about learning from one another. So for those, let's do 6 minutes, what's been so valuable that you'll consider ways of continuing the essence of it. And we're going to just put that everything, so everybody, when we come back, be able to put it on chat. One of the issues that we were considering is that no matter what it is that we're doing, there's new questions to ask of it. That's great. Yes, Bronwyn says the parish Facebook page, so many have discovered that, and the services via Zoom. What about the overlaps that Have people discovered any new bridges between household, church, and school during this time? New Facebook for children. Chris has got. That's an interesting concept too. We're talking about the issues of safeguarding for young people and children under 16 and how they use things. And Wendy was telling us that some FAQs have been developed that are coming out tomorrow. Wendy?
So they came out yesterday.
Yesterday, beg your pardon.
And okay. I mean, Facebook again as well has a certain cut-off point. I think it's 12. I might be wrong though, in terms of who can use it with children.
But no one over 12 will understand, you mean?
If only.
I think also the people that have moved away, that's what's really interesting too. And there was a couple of, I can't remember which school it was, one of the schools in the Good Shepherd Trust, of which I'm a trustee, is some grandparents who had helped in school with reading. Their children had moved on, but they got back in touch just to see what the school was doing. And then they've been invited back for the next generation. And they sort of felt that they'd outlived their usefulness. But through all of this, they've been able to reconnect. And that's really good for everybody. When children start sports again, we'll lose families, but absolutely keeping new pupils arriving, seeing online links to the area. That's really important we've had some overlaps too about churches who are able to communicate their life through their schools and vice versa, that the schools and the churches are very much working together for the community, and that relationship with God at the center, which Folly described on one of his slides, is something that churches do to serve the community, don't they? Yeah, absolutely. That's right, Folly. Thank you very much. Who is it for? For church leaders, we're all asking ourselves in contemplation of doing online services, who is it for? And therefore that will be a different answer depending on who it's for. We don't want to shut out anybody who's joined us during this time but who can't come in. And then discovering in schools, as Sarah has, and described it about collective worship going into the kitchen table. Who is that for? Well, we thought it was for the children, didn't we? But now actually it's for the parents. So Sarah's going to have to do collective worship for adults every day and do one of those. Then do one for children every day. We never anticipated that. Children's and Families Facebook page and Instagram, that's really instant.
And we haven't talked about Messy Church very much, but I don't know if any of you saw the Messy mailing briefing that came out this morning, was it? We got an email, and they've been doing some research into how Messy Church had worked during lockdown. And again, similar messages coming through, but it was really interesting the way that families had connected and wanted to connect whilst face-to-face Messy Church had finished.
Yes. Yeah, Monica's been doing Messy Church.
Some Zoom, some have been delivering packs, and they've been doing Messy Church at home.
My son and his family, 3 little girls, they've got packs from their churches. And then they participate with their toddler church, which they would have normally done when they're there anyway. And they've really appreciated that, to have things already. It's labor intensive, but they feel it's absolutely, if we do, can we expect? Yeah, it is. I think that's absolutely right, Julie. Yeah. It is about relationship and having confidence that actually the gospel of Jesus Christ is good news. It's good news yesterday, today, and forever. And however it is in our own context that we are communicating that, sometimes it's with words, but I suspect mostly it's with relationships and being open and having those relationships so we're learning from one another. This has been a great point of learning for me this afternoon. We're just coming up to the end. We've had Open the Book, Messy Church, Cheesy Church. We're all going to get out there and get our mice so we can hide them in our places. cheesy church, the confidence in the gospel and in praying for God to do God's work, because that's what it is. And that at times it's hard work for us, but it reaps benefits, and it's good to have a chance to stop and just reflect with one another for this hour. What if, I don't know how we can do this now, because you were told at the beginning that if you had to turn yourself off if you didn't want to have it recorded, but just as a reminder as we draw to a close, that this will be available, that not instantly, because Wendy's not that clever, she probably will take an hour or so, but it will be available, including the slides, the hyperlinks. And so on your behalf, I'm going to say thank you to Reverend Jackie and to Sarah from Recklesham. Thank you very much both for being here, and you both have got other things that are really drawing your attention now, so we're really grateful for your wisdom and your presence. And Reverend Folly, thank you so much, and to your brothers and sisters in Oatlands and the way that community is growing through the grace of God, and for what you shared with us. And to everybody else, thank you so much what we learned. And remember that Jane is resource woman. So if there's ever anything you think that could help you in what you're doing, please get in touch with her.
Yes, get in touch.
Equally, if you found something that's great, please get in touch with her, because it just gets stored and shared. So it's a two-way thing. And she is a sponge, Jane, for resources and ideas. So do let her know your good ones.
Well, it's a two-way process, isn't it? If people expect me to know, then I'm able to get them out there. And I didn't know about Bobcast, so I'm off to have a look at Bob Hartland's things. So thank you for
yes.
that.
Yes, thank you very much.